crossing parallel worlds and becoming the emperor of the Great Han Dynasty during the Three Kingdoms period. He successively used the rising imperial system to seize Luoyang, and then began to conquer the entire Han Dynasty from Luoyang. Just as the Han Empire ruled by Liu Xie became the undisputed world hegemon, chat groups arrived. Watching one new world after another, Liu Xie smiled. When Liu Xie, who possessed the imperial era system, led the Great Han Empire to appear in the heavens and all realms. The zombies of the zombie world. Kill them all. Warriors in the world of martial arts. Shoot to death with random arrows. A cultivator in the world of cultivation. The national fortune is coming. Elves in the magical world. Tie it up in the harem. Liu Xie, carrying the imperial era system, completely transformed into a natural disaster and invaded the heavens and all realms. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. The Emperor of Han joining the chat group. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Long live the Emperor, long live. In the North Palace of the Imperial City in Luoyang, Liu Xie, who is now the Emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, sat calmly above the imperial throne and looked down on the civil and military officials below. Looking down at Liu Xie, the civil and military officials in the main hall respectfully paid their respects to Liu Xie above. For today's civil and military officials, the emperor sitting on the throne of the dragon is not simple. The other party rose up forcefully when the people of the whole world were disappointed with the Han family. The other party personally killed Dong Zhuo and, relying on his identity as the emperor of the Great Han, gained military power and directly controlled the city of Luoyang. When the other party controlled Luoyang city, no one in the world cared about them. After all, their strength was there. However, to everyone's surprise, after taking control of Luoyang city, the other party suddenly produced countless more soldiers, who in their view should belong to the royal heritage of the Han Dynasty. No one would doubt the royal heritage of the Han Dynasty. As a royal family that has ruled this land for hundreds of years, who would doubt the other party's heritage? And the other party, relying on their strong Han heritage, forcefully killed them in the chaotic world. In the end, the other party forcefully quelled the chaotic times with the powerful army they possessed. The current emperor of Han, Liu Xie, has the traces of Emperor Guangwu of Han, reshaping the glory and prestige of Han. At this moment, Liu Xie, who was sitting above the imperial throne, looked down with a dull expression in his eyes, and no one knew what he was thinking in his heart. It's been so long. Liu Xie shook her head slightly in her heart. He does not belong to the Emperor Liu Xie of the Great Han Dynasty in history, he belongs to the travelers from Earth. When he learned that he had traveled through time to become the last emperor of the Han Dynasty, he truly fell into an unprecedented confusion. After all, everyone knows what the last emperor of the Han Dynasty will face, and he does not believe that with his abilities, he can end the chaotic times of the Three Kingdoms. However, just as he fell into a moment of confusion, the system belonging to the traveler appeared in time. Empire Era System. This is the system that belongs to him as a time traveler. As the name suggests, it is a system built on the game from the Empire Era. Regarding this system from the Empire Era, Liu Xie initially didn't know how to use it to survive in this chaotic world. But as Liu Xie began to restrain his imperial identity, he instantly understood how to use this system. The most important thing in a chaotic world is undoubtedly military power. As long as he has an army that belongs to him, he can survive in the following chaotic times, and even he may not be able to let this once extinct Han continue. As expected, he began to search for some supplies with his identity as the Emperor of Han, and finally launched a summoning directly. With the start of the summoning, Liu Xie finally had some soldiers who were truly loyal to him, and he used these soldiers to kill Dong Zhuo and seize the palace, finally taking control of the entire Luoyang city. After giving him complete control of Luoyang city, he directly relied on the supplies in Luoyang city to continuously summon soldiers. The final result is already evident by his ability to sit safely in the main hall. He forcefully ended the chaotic era with the help of the imperial era system, and in the end, he completed a reshaping of the Han dynasty similar to Emperor Guangwu of Han. He, Liu Xie, is the current emperor of the Great Han Dynasty. Just as Liu Xie was lost in thought as he looked at the civil and military officials below, an ethereal voice suddenly appeared in Liu Xie's mind. Respected Emperor of Han, Wanjie chat group invites you to join. Do you agree? Faced with a sudden ethereal aura, Liu Xie sitting above the throne of the emperor suddenly froze. Who? In an instant, as Liu Xie's words fell, a terrifying murderous aura erupted directly from Liu Xie. Roaming and rumbling. When this terrifying murderous aura erupted wildly from Liu Xie's body, the civil and military officials in the main hall instantly sensed the powerful aura inside Liu Xie's body. Gudong. As some civil servants felt the terrifying and murderous aura emanating from Liu Xie, a deep tremble flashed in their eyes. Your Majesty, how many people have been killed to possess such a terrifying killing aura? In the hearts of these civil servants, there is truly a deep fear. The current emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, Liu Xie, is not an emperor who grew up in the deep palace. He is a safe and upright emperor. Liu Xie led a large army to conquer the vast Han Empire in the final stages of the Southern and Northern Wars. During this process, Liu Xie almost died many times. Even today, Liu Xie still has some knife and sword marks on his body, which are the marks left on the battlefield. Otherwise, how could Liu Xie control the entire world? That's because Liu Xie led a large army to conquer the world with one sword and one shot. Therefore, Liu Xie's murderous aura was no less than that of any general. In addition to his position as emperor in the current Han Empire, Liu Xie himself was also a top-notch general. Faced with the murderous aura of this emperor general, except for those generals who were able to remain unaffected, all the civil servants looked at their emperor with a solemn expression. Just as many officials looked at Liu Xie with a solemn expression, Liu Xie's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the words in his field of vision. Wanjie chat group. Join. After some thought, Liu Xie directly chose to click OK. In an instant, as Liu Xie chose to join the Wanjie chat group, a screen was displayed directly in front of Liu Xie. The Emperor of Han joined the chat group, seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 2. I am Emperor Liu Xie of the Great Han Dynasty. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The Emperor of Han joined the chat group with the appearance of a message. Liu Xie quickly saw a chat group screen that looked no different from his previous life. Is Penguin Group's business already so extensive? Has Penguin Group completely taken over the business of the Traverse system? Liu Xie slightly tugged at the corner of his mouth. The screen in front of him is no different from the Penguin screen in his past life. How does it look like Huatang has taken the Penguin Group to the heavens and worlds, and even Huatang has started recruiting the golden finger of the Traverse? Where did the Penguin-style chat group in front of him come from? This is clearly created by a group. Emperor Huatang is so terrifying. Liu Xie silently sighed in her heart. While Liu Xie silently sighed in his heart, many members of the chat group also noticed the newly added members. Emperor of Han. Which emperor is this? I saw Yue Buqun in the world of Xiao Jianghu with a hint of doubt on his face. Is this the emperor of the Eastern Han Dynasty or the emperor of the Western Han Dynasty? Yue Buqun muttered to himself with a thoughtless expression in his eyes. He lived in the Ming Dynasty, and he had some understanding of the history of the Han Dynasty. Therefore, for the Han Emperor who appeared in their chat group, Yue Buqun wanted to know whether he belonged to the Eastern Han Emperor or the Western Han Emperor. In the face of Yue Buqun's words, Joshu, who was in the zombie world, was pondering his chin and replied, although I don't know which Emperor of Han he was, his nickname represents everything. He is truly a legitimate Emperor of the Han Dynasty. At this moment, Uncle Joe's eyes flickered with contemplation as he spoke. Emperor. I didn't expect that we could be in a group chat with the Emperor, it's simply unbelievable. Chuan Shizuka's eyes flickered with excitement as she spoke. Emperor. Can this Emperor help me get through the current crisis? Alice muttered to herself in the world of biochemical crisis. The world she is in has entered a zombie crisis, and she is running day and night, unsure if she can survive in today's apocalypse. Just as she felt a moment of confusion about the future, she suddenly joined this so-called universal chat group, and naturally felt a glimmer of hope for this chat group that could communicate with other worlds. However, when Alice had hope for this chat group, she suddenly realized that the various group members in this chat group seemed to have some shortcomings. One is an ancient figure from an ancient Eastern country, and the other is an Eastern figure approaching World War II, whose abilities are not enough to help her overcome the crisis she is currently in. As for the other one is a girl on the island of the East, but she is foolish. Alice doesn't think she has the ability to get through the crisis she is facing. Just as the 4 group members in the chat group were deeply curious about Liu Xie's joining, Liu Xie was scrutinizing his chin and looking at the 4 group members displayed on the screen in front of him. Yue Buqun, this should be Yue Buqun from the Imperial Palace. Jiu Shu, the 9th uncle of the 10,000 Realm Saint. Alice, this should belong to the major history of the biochemical crisis world. But who is this Chuan Shizuka? Faced with the name of Chuan Shizuka, Liu Xie couldn't even imagine who the other person was for a moment. Forget it, although I don't know what this guy's identity is, he should also be a character from many movies, TV shows, and animations in his past life. Liu Xie chose not to dwell on the question of who Chuan Jingxiang was. This chat group seems to be able to make the Han Empire stronger. Regarding this, Liu Xie's eyes flickered with a contemplative gaze as he closely watched Jiu and Yue Buqun. The strength of the current Great Han Empire can definitely be described as terrifying. Unfortunately, the empire granted the era restrictions, and it could only allow its Han territory to dominate in Asia. Although Europa had already been discovered, the limitations of the era prevented it from expanding its territory into Europa. After all, it is impossible for a single expedition to take several months or even a year and a half, right? Even the rebellion of the other party a few months ago was only received by him a few months later, which is clearly not conducive to governance. So Liu Xie had to temporarily abandon the territory of Europa and instead spread the territory of the Han Dynasty directly to the entire Asian region. The current Great Han Empire is undoubtedly a hegemon in Asia, and even in the world, it belongs to the rightful hegemon. And now, as Liu Xie entered this world chat group, he seemed to see the scene of the Han Empire directly unifying the entire world. Liu Xie is not sure what will happen after the complete unification of the entire world by the Han Empire, but the only thing he can be certain of is that as he joins this chat group, he can definitely make his Han Empire the only country of his time with the help of his friends in the chat group. Hooking. While pondering, Liu Xie began speaking to the chat group, "Everyone, I am Emperor Liu Xie of the Great Han Dynasty. I am here to join the Wanjie chat group." I saw Liu Xie speaking into the chat group. "What? Are you Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty? Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards." Chapter 3. The Second Guangwu Emperor of the Great Han Dynasty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What? Are you Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty? In an instant, amidst the world of Xiaoao Jianghu, Yue Buqun instinctively let out a cry of surprise. Faced with Yue Buqun's startled cries, Jiu Shu, who was currently in the zombie world, squinted his eyes slightly and said, "Emperor Liu Xie, the other party is actually the Emperor of the Great Han Dynasty during the Three Kingdoms period." Uncle Jiu's eyes also flashed a hint of surprise. It was obvious that he had thought that the other party's identity was likely to be one of the emperors of the Eastern and Western Han dynasties, but he really never thought that the other party's identity belonged to the late Eastern Han Dynasty emperor, the last emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, Liu Xie. For the last emperor of this great Han, Uncle Gio had a deep seriousness in his eyes. It seems that the problems faced by this great Han emperor are extremely terrible. Uncle Gio immediately thought of the era that Liu Xie was in. There is no doubt that the other party was in a chaotic and legitimate era. As a legitimate emperor of the Han Dynasty, especially if the other party joined this chat group, they must have let the light of the Han Dynasty shine completely on the whole world. Interesting. At the thought of this, Uncle Gio's eyes were filled with a deep smile. As a deep smile filled Uncle Gio's eyes, Yue Buqun, who was in the world of Xiao Jianghu, clearly thought about what it meant for the last emperor of the Han Dynasty to join their chat group. Faced with the surprise and contemplation possessed by Yue Buqun and Jiushu, Alice and Chuan Shizuka looked at Jiushu and Yue Buqun's words with a puzzled gaze. The last emperor of the Han Dynasty. How do I feel that this seems a bit familiar? At the same time, Chuan Shizuka muttered to herself with a hint of doubt in her eyes. She seemed to have heard of this name somewhere, but for a moment she forgot the name she had heard of somewhere. Compared to Chuan Shizuka's entanglement, Alice in the world of biochemical crisis directly expressed her inner doubts. I want to know why you were so surprised when facing the identity of this emperor of Han. Isn't it surprising that the identity of this emperor of the Han Dynasty is very surprising? Alice asked with a thoughtful inquiry in her eyes. Faced with Alice's inquiry, Yue Buqun and Uncle Gio both opened their mouths slightly, thinking about how to explain Liu Xie's identity as the Emperor of Han to Alice. Just as Yue Buqun and Jiushu were preparing to think about how to explain Liu Xie's identity, Liu Xie shook his head slightly and said, "It seems that the world I have traveled through is probably in a parallel world. At least, the fact that the fate of the current Han Empire has changed will not affect other worlds." Regarding the changes in Jiushu and Yue Buqun, Liu Xie naturally knew what the situation was. The other party clearly only understood the fate that belonged to him, the Emperor of Han. That belonged to the fate of Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty, who had not crossed over as a time traveler. However, since he crossed over, the fate of Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty has undergone earth-shattering changes. The chaotic era of the Three Kingdoms in the trajectory of his fate no longer exists, and it has been replaced by the revival of the Han Dynasty. He is the second Guangwu Emperor of the Han Empire. For Liu Xie, many civil and military officials in the hall looked at each other in this way, and they all saw a deep sense of confusion in each other's eyes. "By the way, Your Majesty, what is the situation? What happened?" At the same time, among the ranks of generals, Liu Bu, who is now the god of war in the Han Dynasty, spoke to Zhao Yun behind him and asked. However, facing Lv Bu's inquiry, Zhao Yun shook his head slightly and said, "I really don't know what the situation is, Your Majesty." "You must be in a daze, right?" Zhao Yun looked at Liu Xie, who was lost in thought, and then couldn't help but speak up. However, in response to Zhao Yun's words, Zhang Fei behind him shook his head slightly and said, No, in my opinion, Your Majesty must be thinking about which side we should fight next. It should be to defeat all the barbarians in the West." At this point, Zhang Fei's eyes flickered with a deep excitement. He thought of the scene where he would go on an expedition and beat up the barbarians in the West. Regarding Zhang Fei's excitement, Guangwu behind him had a different opinion. "Let's stop for a moment. Although I don't know why Your Majesty is feeling confused, let's not make any noise. Let's stand here honestly. Your Majesty should think of the problem later, and we only need to obediently follow orders." Regarding this, Guangwu stroked the beard on his chin and spoke calmly. "It makes sense." At the same time, Xiahou Dun behind him nodded in agreement. Soon, many generals in the ranks of generals stood there honestly waiting for Liu Xie's calmness. And many civil servants also look at each other in the ranks of civil servants. Compared to the straightforward personality of the general industry, these civil servants have a particularly clear understanding of their Majesty's ruthlessness. Therefore, when they look at Liu Xie, who is lost in thought, all the civil servants have in their minds is only one idea. It seems that someone will be unlucky again. Just as all the civil and military officials in the Han Dynasty had their own ideas, Liu Xie spoke directly to the chat group. Everyone, let me introduce myself. I am the Emperor of Han, Liu Xie. An unquestionable voice came from Liu Xie's mouth. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 4. Eliminating Zombies. The big man who takes on the task. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Emperor Liu Xie of the Great Han Dynasty. An unquestionable voice came from Liu Xie's mouth. As Liu Xie's words fell, the 4 members of the chat group also turned their gaze to Liu Xie, hoping to see what kind of words the Emperor of Han would say next. Faced with the gaze of the chat group, Liu Xie calmly spoke up. I am the current Emperor of Han, Liu Xie. I have learned about this chat group and roughly know that it is a place where I can communicate with other worlds. My current attitude towards this place is very simple. Since this chat group brings us all together, it must be something we need to do. Why don't everyone speak up about the problems they are facing? Otherwise, this chat group from all over the world wouldn't be as simple as just gathering big guys together to chat, would it? Liu Xie squinted her eyes slightly and said. Liu Shigang just looked at the chat records of the chat group and found that the few guys in this chat group seemed to use this Wanjie chat group as a tool to communicate with other worlds, but there was really no change besides that. Regarding this situation, Liu Xie believes it is necessary to make some changes. Since the art style of this Wanjie chat group is no different from that of the Penguin chat group, there should also be some features of the Penguin chat group. So Liu Xie thinks that instead of using this Wanjie chat group as a tool to communicate with people from other worlds, why not use this Wanjie chat group as a channel to become stronger? As she spoke, Liu Xie stared at Yue Buqun and Zhou Shu. The martial arts in the world of Yue Buqun and the cultivation secrets possessed in the world of Zhou Shu are all attractive to Liu Xie. As they watched Liu Xie's words, the 4 group members in the chat group also showed a thoughtful expression. So, it seems like the same thing. This thing is definitely not as simple as it appears on the surface. At this moment, Yue Buqun nodded in agreement. In Yue Buqun's view, gathering them all together in this Wanjie chat group is definitely not as simple as just gathering them together to chat. There must be some other function that has not been discovered by them. For Yue Buqun's words, the other 3 members of the chat group nodded thoughtfully. With Liu Xie's guidance and Yue Buqun's words, their thoughts immediately began to surge. In the world of biochemical crisis, Alice couldn't help but speak up. The rest of the world I am in should already know, but you probably don't know, Emperor Han. I want the zombies in my world to be completely eradicated now. I wonder if everyone can help me solve this problem. Alice directly expressed her question in the chat group. And just as Alice's words fell, a message instantly appeared on the chat group screen. Alice's request. Help Alice eliminate all the zombies. With the appearance of this message, the entire chat group instantly exploded. This. In an instant, Yue Buqun in the world of Xiaoao Jianhu and Zhou Shu in the world of zombies showed an incredible expression in their eyes. How can this chat group still post tasks? They were truly surprised by this. As old members of this chat group, they had never imagined that there was such a task in this chat group. They had also communicated with Alice, and naturally knew what kind of problem Alice was facing in the world. In their view, the humans in Alice's world will soon be completely eradicated, and Alice may even be infected by the zombies in her mouth at any time. They sympathized with Alice's plight, but really didn't know how to solve the problems facing Alice's world. Now, with Liu Xie's guidance, Alice actually posted a task in the chat group. At this moment, Liu Xie felt a burst of curiosity about the task Alice had posted. It's interesting. Eliminate the zombies in Alice's world. It seems that we are going to the world of biochemical crisis to eliminate these so-called zombies. For the appearance of this task, Liu Xie immediately realized how to complete it. They definitely couldn't cross the world to help Alice solve the zombies in her world. So how should we solve this problem then? In Liu Xie's opinion, it is very simple to go directly to Alice's world to solve the problems of these zombies. Alice's world, that's interesting. Liu Xie's eyes flickered slightly. Although Alice's world has already experienced a zombie crisis, behind that zombie crisis lies a neglected human civilization and a technological civilization. What is contained in a technological civilization is simply a treasure for the ancient times in which it lived. No, I must go and deal with the zombies in Alice's world. In an instant, Liu Xie spoke with a determined expression in his eyes. Alice, I'm here to solve the problems your world is facing. As he spoke, Liu Xie spoke directly into the chat group and said, I will take on Alice's task. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 5 Yue Buqun. The bigger the wind and waves, the more expensive the fish. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'll take on Alice's task. In an instant, as Liu Xie's words fell, the chat group quickly showed that Liu Xie had accepted the task posted by Alice. Ah! This. Your Majesty, are you sure you want to come to my world to solve the zombie crisis in my world? Faced with Liu Xie's actions, Alice immediately felt a wave of disbelief. For Alice, others may not know what kind of situation her boss in this world belongs to. Does she still not know what kind of situation her zombies in this world belong to? The zombies in her world are simply demons. The other party may be an emperor belonging to a country, but it is impossible for them to send a large army directly to her world, right? In Alice's opinion, this is impossible. She has only heard of a war between one country and another, and has never really heard of a country sending troops to another world to solve problems. So in the face of Liu Xie's response, Alice really felt a wave of disbelief. Listening to Alice's words, Yue Buqun and Uncle Jiao were both surprised when the two words Liu Xie appeared under Alice's task on the chat group screen. This. It seems that this emperor is going to use Alice's world's problems to achieve a complete turnaround. Regarding this, Jioshu and Yue Buqun shook their heads slightly. In the eyes of Uncle Jiao and Yue Buqun, Liu Xie took on this task purely because the other party was definitely trying to change the situation he was currently facing. Others don't know what kind of situation Liu Xie is facing, don't their future generations still know? They have a clearer understanding of Liu Xie's fate than anyone else. Now that the other party has joined this chat group, they must consider it a fairy tale. Therefore, regarding Alice's task, the other party will definitely firmly grasp it and try to change the situation they are facing with Alice's task. At the thought of this, Yue Buqun and Uncle Jiao were not particularly surprised by Liu Association's choice to take on Alice's task. I just don't know what kind of existence the zombies in Alice's world belong to, and what kind of difference the zombies in my world belong to. At this moment, Uncle Jiao's eyes flashed with a deep curiosity. He had only heard of the zombies mentioned by Alice, but he had never really seen what this so-called zombie was. But in Uncle Jiao's opinion, since this zombie bears the word corpse, it should also belong to a dead thing. If it belongs to a dead thing, could it be something similar to a zombie? If this is really something similar to a zombie, Uncle Jiao thinks he can definitely take on this task. Because Uncle Jiao believes that this chat group will not post a task for nothing. Since there is a task appearing, there must be a reward, but it is not clear what the reward is. Then I'll take on this task too. If anything goes wrong, I'll immediately return to my world. After thinking for a moment, Uncle Nine chose to take on the task that Alice had posted. It's nothing else, just because Jioshu has absolute confidence in his own strength, and he also believes that the difference between the zombies in the opponent's world and the ones he knows should not be very big. Then I'll come too. As he spoke, Uncle Nine proceeded with the task released by Alice. Regarding Uncle Jiao's actions, Yue Buqun, who was in the world of Xiaoao Jianghu, was caught in a moment of contemplation. Should I choose to take on this task? Yue Buqun really felt a bit conflicted. He actually wants to join this mission because Yue Buqun sees value in Liu Xie. Although it is highly possible that the other party currently only holds the title of emperor and does not have any imperial rights at all, as long as the other party can make a comeback in this chat group, they may not be able to truly become an emperor in the true sense at that time. How powerful is the power held by a true emperor? Yue Buqun, who lived in ancient times, knows better than anyone that the entire world belongs to the emperor. Yue Buqun is very eager to make friends with this potential stock, but he has a strong desire for his own strength. His strength may be quite strong, but it's really a bit difficult to eliminate all the zombies in Alice's world. He doesn't think his strength can solve the zombies in Alice's world. Yue Buqun was deeply anxious about this. Just as Yue Buqun was deeply anxious, Chuan Shizuka in another world spoke with a hint of doubt, is it necessary to completely eliminate all the zombies? Faced with Chuan Shizuka's inquiry, the chat group responded directly. Alice's task is a long-term task, not a one-time task to complete. If you want to quit this task, you can quit at any time, and if you want to join, you can also join at any time. When the reply from the chat group appeared on the screen, Yue Buqun, who was struggling, didn't hesitate to join. There's also me. Let me join this mission too. In an instant, Yue Buqun spoke with a determined expression in his eyes. The bigger the wind and waves, the more expensive the fish. Let me put in a fight. A hint of firmness flashed in Yue Buqun's eyes. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 6. Emperor Liu Xie on his own expedition. Leading. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Well, why don't you come to my world and have an offline game? Watching all the group members except her choose to help her solve the zombie problem in her world, it is false that Alice is not moved. Since all the friends in the chat group are preparing to come to her world, she thinks it may be possible to have an offline game directly in her world. Let everyone be in each other's world, but Alice also felt that since the chat group had posted this task, the chat group would definitely not post it for no reason, and it would definitely bring them all to her world. Otherwise, it's impossible to eliminate the zombies in his world from afar, right? This is clearly impossible. So it will definitely appear in her world by then. Alice's suggestion immediately gained unanimous recognition from the entire chat group. I have no problem, let's have an offline battle in your world by the way, and then we can also eliminate the zombies in your world. Regarding this, Liu Xie stated that there are no issues at all. As for the zombies in Alice's world. Sorry, Liu Xie opened his eyes and looked at the civil and military officials in the hall, especially at the many generals in the field of martial arts. Liu Xie said that perhaps the zombies in Alice's world are very strong, but the strength of many generals in his Han Empire is also not weak. And most importantly, his Great Han Empire is a bit different, as he can summon soldiers. You can directly summon soldiers with the Empire-era system, and the summoned soldiers are fully armed soldiers. In other words, he could lead a large army directly to Alice's world. If 10,000 armies cannot solve those zombies, then 100,000 armies. If 100,000 armies cannot, then 1,000,000 armies. Anyway, he doesn't need his world to provide supplies. He just needs to lead a large army to Alice's world first, and the remaining supplies can be completely provided from Alice's world. Finally, completing it can achieve the goal of using war to sustain war. At the same time, he can also obtain a large number of advanced food seeds and more advanced knowledge books from Alice's world, and most importantly, some instruments that can make the Han Empire stronger. Although Alice's world belongs to a world of zombie outbursts, in Liu Xie's view, it is a safe world full of treasures. There's no problem at all, so let's have an on-site meeting. Regarding this, Yue Buqun in the world of Shao Ao Jianghu and Jiushu in the world of zombies expressed no problem at all, and even Chuan Shizuka, as a silly and cute person, nodded in agreement. Okay, everyone. So I'll prepare first and welcome everyone to my world. Alice took a deep breath, with a deep excitement in her eyes. Quickly, Alice went offline to prepare things. The other members of the chat group didn't pay much attention to Alice's downline, and they also had to choose and prepare what they needed to go to Alice's world. Everyone, then let's meet in Alice's world. Liu Xie spoke to several other members of the chat group. No problem, Your Majesty. Let's meet in Alice's world then. Yue Buqun nodded slightly and spoke. After a while, all 5 members of the chat group went offline to prepare things. After Liu Xie went offline, he fixed his gaze on the civil and military officials in front of him. As Liu Xie fixed his gaze on the civil and military officials in front of him, many of them in the main hall suddenly felt a tingling sensation on their scalp. Gudong. Even Lv Bu, who was standing at the forefront of the general, felt a sense of solemnity. So, what really happened? Regarding this, Lu Bu's eyes also carried a deep heaviness. Although he is known as the first god of war in the Great Han Dynasty, Lv Bu is very clear that although the emperor sitting on the dragon throne is not as strong as him, his opponent's strength can completely rival his. Otherwise, how could he willingly choose to submit to the other party's command? Firstly, the other party is able to give him everything he wants in life, and secondly, to put it simply, it's because the other party has enough strength. So when Liu Xie stared so tightly at all the civil and military officials in the hall, they naturally felt a sense of solemnity. They didn't know what their majesty was going to do next, but faced with his posture, they felt that something big was definitely going to happen next. As expected, just as many civil and military officials felt a tingling sensation, Liu Xie calmly spoke up and said, "The Great Han Empire has been cultivated for so long now. Do you all have the power to fight World War I?" I saw Liu Xie calmly staring at many generals. Faced with Liu Xie's gaze and inquiry, one warrior after another was momentarily stunned, and then all replied with serious and even excited words, "See Your Majesty. We can go to battle and kill the enemy at any time." At this moment, one general after another showed a murderous expression and replied. Faced with the words of many generals and the murderous aura that filled the entire hall, Liu Xie nodded in satisfaction. Very good. Upon my orders, Liu Bu listened and mobilized 100,000 forbidden troops to prepare to follow me to an unknown place for battle. Besides, the other generals stayed in the Han Dynasty to guard their homeland. After pondering for a moment, Liu Xie gave an order directly to Lv Bu, who was at the forefront of the ranks of the generals. "Yes, Your Majesty." In an instant, an excited voice echoed through the hall. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 7. Emperor Liu Xie, Pioneering and Traveling. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yes, Your Majesty. In an instant, a burst of excited words echoed through the entire hall. Faced with this excited voice, many generals behind Liu Bu fell into a daze. Ah! Zhao Yun, who was flipping behind Liu Bu, showed a puzzled expression. At the same time, many generals behind Zhao Yun also showed a bewildered expression as they looked at Liu Xie on the dragon chair. When they were just listening to Liu Xie's words, they thought they were going to have a big fight next, and they were even prepared to fight outside for a few months. And then I didn't expect that their majesty only wanted to mobilize Liu Bu, to mobilize 100,000 forbidden troops to an unknown place. The most important thing is that his majesty will also personally go to that unknown place, which has made many generals a bit uncomfortable in this situation. At the same time, in many aspects of civil service, they also looked at Liu Xie with a puzzled look in their eyes. It is obvious that they all want to know where their majesty wants Liu Bu to lead the 100,000 forbidden army, and even their majesty does not bring them, which naturally makes many civil servants feel a sense of doubt. However, doubts come from doubts. They have no intention of interfering with His Majesty at all. Whatever His Majesty says, that is it. Regarding the doubts in the eyes of many generals, Liu Xie, who was sitting on the dragon chair, smiled and said, "Dear ministers, although we will only follow you to fight next, you will not be able to lead a large army to fight for long. This is just a matter of time. Strictly speaking, this time I'm just leading the way with Fengxian. You also need to be prepared, don't let me send you to battle and kill the enemy when none of you are ready." Liu Xie spoke with a smile in his eyes. Although he only led Lubu to prepare for Alice's biochemical crisis world this time, the Han Empire will definitely try its best to cast all its goals into Alice's world in the future, and will not easily withdraw from the face of the Han Empire not receiving satisfactory rewards. So these generals currently in the hall will soon have to go to Alice's world to lead troops in battle, which is just a matter of time. Faced with Liu Xie's words, many generals in the hall instantly understood, "Yes, Your Majesty. We understand. We can go to battle and kill the enemy for Your Majesty at any time." At this moment, generals were all shouting loudly, "Kill, kill, kill, kill." In the blink of an eye, waves of murderous intent began to flood the entire hall once again. Faced with waves of murderous intent filling the entire hall, the civil servants in the hall turned pale for a moment, while Liu Xie, sitting on the dragon chair, nodded slightly to express satisfaction. "Wen Kai Qiusheng, it may take me some time to go to a place next. Stay here honestly. If anyone wants to come to me to do something, you can say that I have been out for a while and will be back soon." Uncle Jiu admonished his disciples Wen Kai and Qiusheng. He didn't know how long it would take to go to Alice's world this time, but there wasn't much going on here at the moment, so Uncle Nine reminded Wen Kai and Qiusheng. Faced with the advice from Uncle Jiu, Wen Kai and Qiusheng nodded slightly and said, "Don't worry, Master. If there's anything small, Wen Kai and I can solve it." Qiusheng patted his chest and replied. Regarding Qiusheng's reply, Wen Kai on the side also nodded and said, "That's right, Master. We can completely solve some small problems and similar things. If we really encounter a problem that we cannot solve, then we just need to wait for you, Master, to come back." Regarding this, Wen Kai and Qiusheng expressed it this way. Listening to Wen Kai and Qiusheng's replies, Uncle Jiu nodded slightly and said, "All right, be honest during this period. Then I'll leave first. Remember, be honest. Don't worry, Master." Quickly, Uncle Jiu went directly to his practice room. After Uncle Jiu explained everything, Yue Buqun, who was in the world of Xiao Jianghu, also explained some future affairs. "Junior sister, I'm going to stay in the practice room for a while. During my closed cultivation period, everything about the Huashan sect has been entrusted to you. If anything happens that you can't solve, just wait for me to leave the level and solve it." Yue Buqun spoke to his wife Ning Zhongzi. "Senior brother, don't worry, I will definitely manage the Huashan sect in an orderly manner." Ning Zhongzi nodded and replied. "Junior sister, I believe you, so I'll go to seclusion first." Soon, Yue Buqun's figure walked directly towards the direction of the practice room. As for Chuan Shizuka. After looking at the absence of anyone around her, Chuan Shizuka directly chose to speak to the chat group and said, "Then let's start this task." As Chuan Shizuka's words fell, a faint blue door of time and space was directly displayed in front of Chuan Shizuka. Take action. After explaining the good things in their respective worlds, Uncle Jiu and Yue Buqun directly spoke to the chat group. Buzzing. But the space began to make waves of wriggling sounds, and a faint blue door of time and space appeared in the sight of Joshu and Yue Buqun. Facing the eerie blue gate of time and space, Uncle Jiu and Yue Buqun let out a deep breath. "In another world, I'm here." As soon as they finished speaking, Uncle Jiu and Yue Buqun walked with firm steps. Step by step. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 8. The 100,000 Forbidden Army of the Great Han Empire. Attack on the enemy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hooking. The gentle breeze began to blow incessantly, and at the same time, a sense of solemnity began to envelop the breeze and spread throughout the entire world. And just as the wave of killing began to blow towards the whole world with a gentle breeze, Liu Xie, riding a white horse, calmly looked down at the 100,000 forbidden army in his field of vision. Very good, very good. Looking at the 100,000 forbidden army in front of him, Liu Xie nodded with satisfaction in his eyes. For these soldiers summoned by the system of his empire era, they perfectly fulfilled the prohibition. Even any soldier belonging to his Han Empire, any soldier summoned by him, has been strictly prohibited. It is precisely because his soldiers of the Han Empire strictly prohibited it that he was able to lead his soldiers to sweep the empire again and reshape it. Otherwise, what would he do to conquer the world? The soldiers summoned by the imperial era system are absolutely loyal to his emperor, and they will never have any complaints. Whatever the emperor asks these soldiers to do, they will do it. This is simply the most perfect soldier. And now, he is going to lead these soldiers to a different world to defeat the reputation of his Han Empire. Faced with Liu Xie's parade on a white horse, Lu Bu, who was riding a red rabbit behind Liu Xie, now had a deep emotion in his eyes. Although he had known these soldiers had strictly prohibited them for a long time, when he saw these soldiers again, he still felt a deep shock. When Lv Bu looked at the soldiers who possessed them, a deep boasting appeared in his eyes. For the soldiers trained by the current Emperor Liu Xie, this is the soldier that all generals in the world dream of, because the soldiers trained by the current emperor have truly achieved explicit prohibition. How many people dream of soldiers like this? They have also attempted to train soldiers similar to those trained by His Majesty the Emperor, but unfortunately, they have all failed. No soldier trained by anyone can compare to His Majesty the Emperor. The soldiers trained by His Majesty the Emperor are like puppets. If it weren't for them knowing that these soldiers have their own emotions, they would cry, laugh, argue, curse, and even have their own needs. But once under command, these soldiers completely transform into killing machines, perfect soldiers, just like losing their emotions. This is the evaluation that Lu Bu has of it. And next, he led the most powerful 100,000 imperial guards in the Han Empire to follow their emperor to unknown places for battle. Just as Liu Bu was lost in thoughts, Liu Xie had already rode a white horse to the front of a 100,000-strong army. Soldiers, I won't say much else. The whole army obeys orders, pick up the weapons in your hands, and follow me to a new place to kill the enemy. Liu Xie waved his hand. Faced with Liu Xie's order, soldiers clenched their long spears and shouted loudly, "Kill! Kill! Kill!" In an instant, strands of killing energy converged into a dragon-like killing energy hovering throughout the entire world. Roar, roar. The killing dragon condensed from the killing energy roared in the sky. Let's go. Faced with the soldiers' replies, Liu Xie waved his hand. Buzzing. Just as Liu Xie waved his hand, a faint blue door of time and space was displayed directly in front of him. Facing the dark blue crossing gate displayed in front of him, Lu Bu, standing behind him, stared blankly at the appearance of this crossing gate. This. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. In an instant, Lu Bu stared blankly at the suddenly appearing door of time and space, feeling a wave of confusion. Just as Lu Bu was deeply bewildered, Liu Xie in front of him spoke calmly, "Don't panic, you'll know where to go for the battle later. You just need to hold on to the Fang Tianhua halberd in your hand, and there will be countless enemies waiting for you to slaughter." Liu Xie spoke calmly. Listening to Liu Xie's calm words, Lv Bu also took a deep breath at this moment. Is this gentleman-like method used by His Majesty? Looking at the faint blue door of time and space, Lv Bu felt a deep sense of confusion in his heart. However, looking at Liu Xie's calm appearance, it seemed like something Liu Xie had created. At least Liu Xie knew about the existence of this thing. Enemy, there will be countless enemies next. At this moment, Liu Bu also recalled the words that Liu Xie had just told him. For a moment, Liu Bu really didn't know how to answer the situation of countless enemies. No matter how many enemies there are, just wave the Fang Tianhua Jian in my hand. Liu Bu took a deep breath. He doesn't care what the enemy he will face next will be like, he just needs to rely on the Fang Tianhua halberd in his hand and the weapons in his hands to lead the 100,000 forbidden army to wield. Is it true that the other party is a legendary immortal or not? As long as the other party is not a legendary immortal, as long as the other party belongs to a flesh and blood body, then his Fang Tianhua Ji can definitely kill the other party and turn them upside down. Bang, bang, bang. The mighty 100,000 forbidden army continuously flooded into the gate of time and space. Let's go, let's go. Go to a different world. Liu Xie waved his hand. Yes, Your Majesty. Liu Bu spoke with a serious expression on his face. At the same time, a deep sense of solemnity flickered in Liu Bu's heart. In another world. Does this door lead to another world? Are you going to fight people from other worlds next? Liu Bu couldn't help but think to himself. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 9. Chuan Shizuka. Is he the Emperor of the Three Kingdoms? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Are you Yue Buqun? When everyone appeared in the place where Alice was, Uncle Gio spoke with a puzzled expression. Although there was a hint of doubt in Uncle Gio's words, the affirmation in his eyes already indicated Yue Buqun's identity. That's right, I'm Yue Buqun. Faced with Uncle Gio's inquiry, Yue Buqun smiled slightly and nodded. Yue Buqun didn't feel anything was amiss when Uncle Gio was able to ask about his identity. Except for Liu Xie who didn't join the chat group, there were only two men in the group. Is he Yue Buqun or who? In response to Yue Buqun's reply, Uncle Gio also smiled slightly and said, I didn't expect you to be a member of my sect. It's really unexpected. Uncle Gio also smiled. And just as Jiushu and Yue Buqun recognized each other and started talking, Chuan Shizuka, who was standing beside them, seemed a bit silly and cute. Are we already in another world now? Chuan Shizuka spoke with some confusion in her eyes. That's right, welcome everyone. You have come to the world I am in. Just as everyone arrived at the world where Alice was in, Alice looked at the three figures that appeared in front of him. Alice's eyes showed a hint of emotion as she spoke. I didn't expect that this chat group from all over the world could really bring people from other worlds to my world. Alice's eyes showed a hint of deep surprise. Alice watched helplessly as three dark blue gates of time and space appeared in front of her, and then three figures emerged from them. With the power displayed by these gates of time and space, it was definitely not something that the umbrella company belonging to her world could possess. In other words, this so-called Wanjie chat group is really a place to communicate with other worlds, and all the friends in the chat group come from other worlds. They may not really have a way to solve the zombie crisis that my world is facing. Alice felt a deep excitement in her heart when she thought that the chat group members came from another world. If the other person is an existence in her world, they may not have the ability to solve the zombie crisis, but they are from other worlds. The existence of other worlds may have some wonderful means to solve the zombie crisis that his world is facing, so Alice at this moment is looking at the three figures in front of her with hope. By the way, why hasn't the Emperor of Han come yet? Looking at the three figures in front of her, Alice spoke with a hint of doubt in her eyes. For Alice's confusion, Uncle Gio spoke slightly at this moment, that Emperor of Han, the other party's identity is there. It is already not easy for the other party to come to our world. The other party should be dealing with some things. Uncle Gio quickly explained. That's right, the other party should be dealing with some things. The other party is coming soon and may need some time to wait. Yue Buqun, who was standing beside him, also spoke up slightly and explained. Yue Buqun and Uncle Jiu understand what Liu Xie's identity is. In Yue Buqun and Uncle Jiu's view, Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty may be preparing some life-saving measures, or the other party may be looking for a suitable opportunity to escape surveillance and come to Alice's world. In short, the other party does not belong to their kind of freedom. Although the other party claims to be an emperor, their emperor actually belongs to a puppet emperor. Then wait a moment. Listening to the explanations of Uncle Jiu and Yue Buqun, Alice said there was no problem. The other party could come to her world to solve the zombies in his world. In Alice's opinion, it was already very difficult. How could she be angry because the other party did not arrive in time? That is impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, is the Emperor of Han you are referring to the same Emperor of Han from the Three Kingdoms period? Just as Alice expressed complete indifference, Chuan Shizuka, who looked a bit silly on the side, suddenly couldn't help but ask Yue Buqun and Uncle Jiu. For the silly and adorable Chuan Shizuka, she really couldn't figure out which Emperor Han was referring to at the moment. However, after much thought, Chuan Shizuka finally couldn't help but ask her clearly knowledgeable ninth uncle and Yue Buqun. For Chuan Jingxiang, a serious Japanese pirate, perhaps other emperors of the Great Han Dynasty may not be particularly familiar, but the emperors of the Three Kingdoms period are different. The popularity of the romance of the Three Kingdoms among the Japanese pirate countries can be considered as well known to the whole people. Even the silly and cute Chuan Shizuka knows a little, but he may not react for a while. But as time passed, Chuan Shizuka also began to gradually remember who the Emperor of Han, Liu Xie, was. He was the Emperor of Han during the Three Kingdoms period. Faced with Chuan Shizuka's sudden words, Yue Buqun and Jiu Shu looked at each other. They both saw a hint of surprise in each other's eyes, but it was just some surprise. Because they also know that Chuan Shizuka belongs to a guy from the neighboring Japanese pirate country, and they have some understanding of their Shenzhou history. That's right, Emperor Liu Xie was the Great Han Emperor from the Three Kingdoms period. Yue Buqun nodded slightly and spoke. What? The other party is actually the Emperor of Han during the Three Kingdoms period. Listening to Yue Buqun's words, Chuan Jingxiang instantly fell into a state of excitement. The Emperor of Han during the Three Kingdoms period. Wow! Just as Chuan Shizuka was in a state of excitement, a door of time and space appeared directly in everyone's sight. Wow! Just as the gate of time and space had just appeared, a series of loud marching sounds began to sound behind the gate of time and space. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, heavily armed Han soldiers stepped out directly from behind the gate of time and space. Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards. Chapter 10. The Great Han Empire in the Resident Evil. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bang, bang, bang. In the blink of an eye, heavily armed Han soldiers stepped out directly from behind the gate of time and space. Faced with one fully armed soldier after another, everyone present froze. Ah, this. Looking at the heavily armed Han soldiers, Yue Buqun's eyes were filled with confusion. Just as Yue Buqun had a deep sense of confusion in his eyes, more and more Han soldiers directly crossed the gates of time and space to reach the world of biochemical crisis. Wow! As rows of Han soldiers began to enter the world of biochemical crisis, the gaze of everyone present gradually evolved from initial confusion to disbelief. Well, if I'm not mistaken, this should be the soldier under the hands of the Emperor of Han, right? At this moment, Alice looked at the army surging out of the gate of time and space, and couldn't help but open her mouth and say. Regarding the Emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, Alice knew that the other party belonged to an emperor of a country. Since the other party's identity belonged to an emperor of a country, it seemed not unbelievable that the other party could mobilize troops now. Could it be that this Emperor of Han is leading his army to solve the problem of zombies in my world? At the same time, Alice's eyes lit up instantly. In Alice's view, she does not deny that many members of the chat group have their own means, because according to the descriptions of Yue Buqun and Joshu, their strength is still quite strong. But no matter how strong their strength is, they cannot solve the zombie crisis in her world. The number of zombies is directly proportional to the population. Before the zombie crisis broke out, the population of her world was over 6 billion. Now it's hard to say that all of the over 6 billion have turned into zombies, and how can we calculate it to be over 5 billion? There are over 5 billion zombies here. Even though Yue Buqun and Joshu may be powerful, they ultimately belong to humans, not gods. But now it's different. The Emperor of Han in the chat group actually led his army to her world. With the army deployed, it seemed extremely easy to deal with the zombies. At this thought, Alice's eyes lit up slightly. She seemed to see that her world had finally ushered in a beam of dawn. Wow! Isn't this the Emperor of the Three Kingdoms? Indeed, they truly deserve to be His Majesty the Emperor. These soldiers are really too powerful. Chuan Shizuka, who was stunned and queued on the side, looked at the majestic appearance possessed by the heavily armed Han soldiers, and her eyes lit up instantly. These soldiers are not simple, they are definitely among the elite and serious. As more and more soldiers entered, Uncle Joe's gaze gradually shifted from initial confusion to solemnity at this moment. In Uncle Joe's view, these soldiers were not just elite soldiers who appeared fully armed on the surface, but the evil energy emanating from their bodies was simply terrifying in Uncle Joe's eyes. The blood-red evil energy permeated from one soldier after another, setting off these soldiers as if they were demons on earth. If it weren't for the fact that these soldiers had no demonic or even ghostly aura on their bodies, Uncle Joe might have treated them like demons and monsters. The demonic energy emanating from these soldiers is truly astonishing, as if every soldier crawled out of a pile of corpses. This Emperor of the Great Han may have exceeded my expectations. Perhaps this Emperor of the Great Han is not the one I know of. At this moment, as Uncle Joe looked at the soldiers, he suddenly felt that the Emperor Liu Xie in their chat group was likely not the one he knew about. Because if the other party is really the Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty whom he knows, where did these soldiers come from? How could Emperor Liu Xie, who possessed these soldiers, be a puppet? Various mysteries enveloped Liu Xie, making it impossible for Uncle Joe to see his true identity. Yue Buqun also shared the same feeling. Although Yue Buqun could not see the evil energy emanating from these soldiers, he could sense a deadly crisis in the aura emanating from them. This deadly crisis was a reminder to Yue Buqun that these soldiers were definitely not as simple as they seemed on the surface. If he fought against these soldiers, the existence of defeat and death would belong 100% to him. Is this Emperor of Han, Liu Xie, really the one I know of? There was a hint of confusion in Yue Buqun's eyes regarding this. Just as everyone had different thoughts, Liu Xie, riding a white horse, also arrived at the world of biochemical crisis through the gate of time and space at this moment. Step by step. When a man wearing golden armor with dragon patterns appeared in everyone's sight riding a white warhorse, everyone's eyes were fixed on the man wearing golden armor. "See your Majesty." In an instant, Yue Buqun spoke up first. Faced with this person wearing a golden armor, especially the dragon patterns engraved on this armor, they all represent their identity. The other person is Emperor Liu Xie of the Han Dynasty. Although Liu Xie, the Emperor of the Great Han Dynasty, had a slightly different understanding from what he knew, his identity was definitely that of the Emperor. "See your Majesty." In an instant, facing Yue Buqun's words, the other three people followed closely and began to pay homage. "Ladies and gentlemen, I am Emperor Liu Xie of the Great Han Dynasty." Looking at the four figures in front of him, Liu Xie smiled and said, "Seeking flowers, seeking monthly tickets, seeking rewards.